Balancing the economy, land, labor, capital, when in balance, gives prosperity to all. Presented by Nigel Gittins. In the context of today's economic scenario, this diagram on the left represents the panacea, hidden though it may be, to the economic dilemma facing the country. All problems and issues that have been listed or that will be listed in this conference have as its genesis the lack of observance of what is stated in this diagram. Let's discuss. The first obvious question is whether these three factors of production are in balance. Put another way, is labor on par with land or capital? Could labor reasonably afford land or capital? Could capital reasonably afford land or is reasonably happy with the output of labor? Are the valuable lands being optimally employed by labor and capital? If the answer to any of these questions is no, then it must be that these factors are unequal and are out of balance. Is this imbalance related to the plethora of socio-economic problems now confronting Trinidad and Tobago or anywhere else in the world? Let's have a look at another diagram which depicts schematically what's happening on the ground in any community. So we have this diagram, a schematic diagram of the economic landscape of a city, a port city, a city near the sea, where the commercial sites occupy those lands that are closest to the port, and then the residential sites, being urban or suburban, occupy the sites that are a little further away, and then the industrial sites occupy lands that are a little more further away, and then the agricultural sites occupy lands that are furthest away, and there are vacant sites, located within and between these sites of various activities. In this diagram, we represent the typical economic activity that would prevail on the landscape of many countries. In many port cities of these countries, we can have commercial activity adjacent to the port, and these lands would be of high value. Adjacent to these, we would have residential and recreational sites of lesser value, where the people who frequent these commercial sites would reside. Further out, on lands of still lesser value, you will have industrial and agricultural activity. And then you will come to lands that are not engaged in any economic activity at all. You will notice as you traverse throughout the economic landscape that there are valuable sites, be they commercial, residential, industrial, or agricultural, that are either vacant, underutilized, or carrying on the wrong economic activity. The question is, does this phenomenon relate in any way to the levels of unemployment, underemployment, lack of economic activity, and business depression that we are now witnessing? So is this phenomenon of vacancy within these sites of the various activities, economic activities, responsible for unemployment, underemployment, lack of economic activity, and business depression? What impact would there be on the overall economy if these non-producing sites were brought into use? Are the owners of these sites deliberately holding them out of use, or cannot get the capital to bring them into use? What mechanism or measure will force these sites to come onto the market and trade with each other? The answer to the third question is site value taxation, which is the taxation of the market value of the site, either in whole or a significant portion of it. Would this measure have a positive impact on unemployment and underemployment, business formation, diversification, and a growth in the GDP of the country? Would it bring balance to the economy? Could this site value tax be passed on to the consumer? The answer is no, because all valuable sites will now be subject to the tax. The consumer will likely have the option to purchase at another site or seek another site for business setup if he is an entrepreneur. In both instances, the prices would be exceedingly more affordable. Other benefits to be had from such a fiscal approach by the state include, but are not limited to, employment throughout the economy with salaries and wages that have real purchasing power, significantly reduced reliance on the state for employment, housing, and social services. The impact on the environment would be positive on towns and villages as towns and villages become more compact and urban sprawl is eliminated. The incidence of undesirable taxation on labor and capital can now be shifted onto valuable lands, which will be much less onerous on the ordinary citizen. Cost of living and inflation will now be significantly reduced. Conclusion: land, labor, capital, when in balance, gives prosperity to all. This proposed system is not new and has been proposed since the late 18th century by the great socio-economic thinkers of that time and coming up through the ages: Adam Smith, David Ricardo, John Stuart Mill, Henry George, and others. The prescription has been largely ignored or forgotten. What is obvious is that such a prescription must now be seriously considered and adopted if we are to revert quickly to economic well-being. For a full and robust treatment of this important subject, I recommend to you my latest literary offerings. These books are available both digitally and hard copy at Amazon.com. First book on development, innovative solutions for the development dilemma facing Trinidad and Tobago. This book was written in 2015, and it's a good read with lots of information on Trinidad and Tobago and where we could easily go to change the fortunes, economic fortunes in this country. And then my latest publication, which was written in 2018, it's called Sustainable World: The Utilitarian Economy Where Everyone Has a Chance. And it has to do with how we could easily meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. And on the current course on which United Nations is following is doomed to failure if the prescriptions proposed in this book is not adopted. So thank